Hey everyone, what's up, guys? Hope you guys are doing awesome. Welcome to another video on the Project Controls Mentor. I received awesome feedback on my first video, but I'm really sorry. I was out of town and I couldn't, continue working on any kind of video, but I'm back now and, I'm going to try my best to at least release one lesson or two lessons every couple of weeks or something like that. But I'm going to come up with a schedule. All right. So as you guys remember, we started out talking about project layouts. Now that's really an awesome way to start out a project. What's the next thing you need to know about? As planning engineers, we definitely need to know about project contracts, the contract document. Now, obviously, you don't need to be an expert on that. You're not a project manager right now, or you're not a contract administrator or manager. But definitely, you need to know how to scan through that document and extract information from that and be able to record that information. Now, before we go deeper into contracts, obviously, we won't go much deeper, but we're definitely going to go into details on the priorities of these contract documents. But before that, we need to see what is a project contract. Now, when we look at the literal meaning, well, it is an agreement and it could be between two or more parties, and it's creating mutual obligations which are enforceable by law. Now, when we say obligations, well, obviously we're talking in terms of construction, right? So in this case, a contractor would be delivering a project. Now, this could be a high-rise building. It could be a school, hospital, infrastructure like a bridge, roads, whatever, you name it. And it's done for a client. Now, obviously, the client is supposed to compensate for that. And this is the 21st century. And obviously, it's mostly in terms of finance, which is money, right? So three things. Whenever someone asks you about what's a contract, it's an agreement between two or more parties, and one party is performing some obligations and the other party is, compensating them for that. And the third thing is it's legally binding. So when we say legally binding, if one party or the other breaches that contract, it's obviously enforceable by law. And you can be taken into court, or there could be other kind of disputes or claims that arise and litigations and all that stuff. So there are different ways to, resolve those conflicts, but well, the last resort is it could end up in court. Never mind. We don't need to go much detail. We don't need to know much in detail about that. So what planning engineers need to do is, I'll reiterate that. So they should be able to scan, not even read, let's just say scan through those contract documents and be able to extract information and record that in a separate document. Maybe you can just maintain that. And it's basically called a project information document, but I am going to discuss more about that later on. All right. So when we talk about contract documents, what comes to your mind? Is it like a fat bundle of a book or set of pages, like 1,000 pages or something? It is kind of like that. It definitely is. It's sometimes contract documents are like more than 200 or 500 pages, depending on the size of the project, or sometimes they're just like 30 pages or 50 pages as well, depending on the scope of the work, So so it's not just one document. We have a set of documents in the contracts, and each set of document, each section has different priority. So we're going to talk about that in the next slide. And the third thing we need to know is that we as planning engineers, we should be able to, advise our PM and our team in case, discrepancies arise when the work is being executed, or there's delays and stuff like that. So that's the importance of project contracts. So once you understand the project layout, you need to be able to read that contract, extract information, and record it. All right, so I was talking about the priority. So let's say there are some differences, there are some discrepancies, and there are some ambiguities, right? Now, in case you have these issues, we would need to understand that the different set of documents have different priorities. You could say they have different strengths. and some documents supersede some other kind of documents. Now, so the contract documents, first of all, we need to understand, are developed from the tender documents. So obviously it's like, let's say you're a contractor, you don't have much control over that. You get those tender documents, and then sometimes there's a joint commission which sits together and kind of, adds stuff to it and all that. But mostly it's just handed over to you, and it's being done by the client or the consultant. So what's included in the contract document? So there's an agreement form, and basically what I'm going to show you an example after we finish these slides. So the agreement form basically has a project name. It has information about the different parties involved, maybe like the owner, the consultant, the contractor. It has information about the contract value, the type of contract, and then the project scope. So the general high-level scope of works. So this is the contract document which has the highest priority. Then we have the particular conditions, so let's say you have some specific clauses that need to be amended. You're going to add that to the particular conditions, and these could be with respect to obligations, responsibilities, liabilities, and you can for this project you will be able to specify them in detail in this section. Then you have the general conditions, and this is the one of the most easiest conditions to have in your contract document, because it's mostly kind of copied from the standard contracts. And now when we say standard contracts, it could be FIDIC, which is mostly used in the Middle East, and the NEC, which is used in the West. But obviously you don't have to accept them blindly, right? You need to be able to see what conditions are applicable to that project. Then again, the general conditions also talks about the high-level obligations, the responsibilities of each party, and the liabilities. So this has the third priority in this. Then we have the drawings, which obviously is self-explanatory. Then we have the specifications. Then we have the bill of quantity. Now let's say they handed over the bill of quantity to you, right? And in that they mention some kind of scope of work which is not mentioned in the particular conditions, right? So in that case, if you don't do what the bill of quantity says, there shouldn't be a big issue, because a particular condition did not specify that, and that has more authority or more priority over the BOQ. So you could dispute that, right? Because even if the BOQ mentions that, there's no mention about that in the general conditions or the drawings or the particular conditions, which are way above the bill of quantity. So these are the 6 documents. There could be more, there could be less, depending on the project again. But this is a general consensus that there should be these documents which should form, part of the contract. All right, so we talked about that. Now I'm going to show you some documents I have as samples. This is from the training I had done years ago. So let's look at the general conditions, the particular conditions, and the agreement form. How do they look? So it's a sample. Obviously, it's not in much detail, but it's going to give you the idea, like how do you scan through it and how do you come up with a document. I'm going to show you the project contract information document. So once you read the contract, it is really, really important to come up and build a project contract information document. So let me just pull that up. We are looking at the contract document right now. So this is a sample of, so as you can see, there's a name of the project. All right, the contract agreement, when was it entered into, the date, and the parties involved. It could be the consultant, the client, and the contractor, etc. and then the high level scope of work, what kind of works are being performed. Like, for example, in this case, there's supply, fabrication, delivery, and erection of the future city, blah, blah, blah. And then two parties are involved here. And what's the purpose of the contract? What are the contract documents? So as we mentioned, like, there's the contract agreement that we are currently looking at. We have the particular conditions, we have the general conditions, the drawings, specifications, bill of quantity, and we also have, okay, so I didn't mention about this, but we could have contract rates and the schedules and any other documents that are forming part of the contract. So this is the, so in the contract agreement, they already specify that if there are any differences and discrepancies arising between the documents, the above order of precedence shall prevail. So there's no ambiguity in case problems arise. You're going to follow this. So if something is mentioned here and it's not mentioned here, then obviously we're going to go with this. And if something is mentioned here and not here, then we are going to discard this, right? Not everything, obviously. The thing which is not included in the other, which is not talked about in the other conditions. So then we have different. So what are the terms and conditions? So this is an important section the planning engineer should be able to extract information from. So the contractor shall achieve completion and handover of works no later than this date. So this is the deadline. And if it's extended, what happens? How are we gonna be punished for that, basically? And these are the key milestone dates, and you need to record these. What does it compensate? What does it consist of? And all that stuff. And what are the warranty conditions? What is the contract value? And how are we going to invoice this? So this is more like for the quantity surveyor and the costing team. Then there's some acknowledgement, some laws. In this case, this was in Egypt, so they have Egyptian laws. And the contract endorsement, who was this signed by, and all that stuff. So this is like 6 pages, but there's a lot of information which is really, really beneficial for us. All right, so now let's go to the general conditions. All right, so this is the general conditions. In this case, it says the form of contract is based on the conditions of contract for blah, 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 prepared by the FIDIC First Edition 99. So basically, in this case, they are using the FIDIC First Edition 99, and they're going to set out the general conditions based on that. So they don't have anything here. Now let's move on to the particular conditions. All right, so here we are in the particular conditions, and as you can see, there's 6 pages. So there are different clauses, which so the employer representative or project manager means blah blah blah. The engineer means blah blah blah. So which parties are termed what. So normally, people who are consultants to the clients, they're called the engineers, and they're basically appointed by the employer, and they kind of do the management and everything. So the contract, the letter of acceptance, letter of tender, appendix to tender, and all that stuff. So there's information on the work schedule, like if the contractor is behind the work schedule, the employer may add a sole option, blah blah blah, with 10 calendar days prior written notice. So they have all the information about what kind of equipments are we using, and how the work schedule is going to be. And so these are all clauses that they kind of amended. So you can have a look at this as well. You can just pause the video and read through this. And based on this, so for example, site power source, the client should be able to provide the contractor with permanent power source on this date. So this is another milestone. Then there's another milestone. Then submittals. Yeah, so this is really important. What's the turnaround for the submittals? How long does the engineer take to revise and respond to the contractor? So this is really important as well. All right, so as you can see, Then there's an appendix. Let's say there's some things which are not part of these clauses. So for example, we have like a summary of everything. What are the normal working hours? If there's delay, how are we going to cost that? What are the maximum amount of delay damages? And how what currencies are we gonna use, and all that stuff. So you can also pause the video and look at this. All right, so finally we are gonna create a document which is basically gonna look like this. It's basically gonna be a contract agreement information. So you're gonna have all these important information and try to extract, like, okay, some information is going to come from the agreement, some things are going to come from the particular conditions, and then we have the contract general conditions. So this is like one document with quite a few dates and values and days which are important for the planning engineer when he is building the schedule. So that's about it for today's video. As you can see, the contract is really, really important for planning engineers, schedulers to, build upon a schedule from. And there's lots of information. I just showed you a small sample from a training. Obviously, your documents wouldn't look the same as this, and they could be in much more detail with so many sections and information, and it could take more time, but we kind of like skim through all of this in 15 minutes or 20 minutes. So I'm pretty sure that once you get a hang of how things are done, if you understand the concept, you can apply this to any kind of project. So let me know if there was any kind of information that I missed out on, and I can always help you out with whatever questions you have, and feel free to comment, and do remember to subscribe. And thanks again for your time, and take care. Bye bye.